My name's John Glendon. I'm a Rotary Youth Exchange student from Canada. From Canada, I went to Auckland, New Zealand. And I'm in Fiji right now working on a project bringing tablets to kids. My role in this project is to be the group photographer, the guy who lifts the equipment, and I've taken somewhat of a teacher role. I just feel a good connection with the kids because they're so similar to my age, and I like having something that I know and pretty confident in, and then letting them know. The idea of going across the world to live with a family who you've never met, to go to a school where you don't know a single person, to go to a country where you possibly don't know the language is absolutely terrifying. I was so afraid, so scared of absolutely everything. I was scared about the little things, like what if they don't have my favorite brand of toothpaste? But if I could give one word of advice, one sentence of advice to anybody and every kid in the world, is just do it. You won't regret it. In 6 months, I've become a different person. Emotionally, physically, mentally, I see things differently and I act differently, and I'm confident in the way of speaking to people. I can't wait just to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm so happy with where I am in my life. I'm so happy that I've been able to teach and to tell people about my experiences, to hear their stories. Rotary Youth Exchange is where my new life and my new beginnings have started, and I can't thank Rotary enough.
Good afternoon, Rotarians, friends, and guests. I'm Hannibal B. Johnson. It's my privilege as president to welcome you to the Rotary Club of Tulsa. In 1981, at the Rotary International Convention in Brazil, Mother Teresa said as follows: if we really want to love, if we really want to live, we must love until it hurts. No Rotarian whose motto is service above self, I think, should call himself a Rotarian if he does not make time to serve. If we love, we begin to serve. And this is where that beautiful motto begins that the Rotarians have made this year: take time to serve. So thank you for taking time to be here, but more importantly, thank you for taking time to serve. Speaking of service, last evening, past President Mike Homan hosted a Rotary Club of Tulsa President's Dinner for our past presidents, current president, and president-elect. What a remarkable evening it was, surrounded by servant leaders of the highest order. It was, in a word, inspirational. And you see a photo of the entire group at that august gathering. If you haven't already done so, please take a moment to silence your cell phones now. Thank you. A special thanks to Tom Wolfe for our pre-meeting musical interlude. Tom. Let's begin our program with Song and Pledge from DJ Morrow Ingram, Invocation from Bob Sade, and visitor introductions from Danny Stocksell.
If you will join me first in singing God Bless America, then we'll follow with the Pledge of Allegiance. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, my home sweet home. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we give thanks today that we live in a free society and that there are brave souls that have fought and sacrificed to protect that freedom. And as we head into an election, we give thanks that there are those among us who are willing to run for office to continue the ideals of our democracy. We ask a blessing for our elected officials that they will find ways to improve life for all they serve. And today we especially ask a blessing for those affected by the recent storms. Watch over them and give them comfort as they begin the healing process. Amen.
Well, good morning. I'm excited about today's program, excited to be here. I want to introduce our guest for today. If you could hold your applause until we have read all of our guests. Today we have got Micah Paul, who's a guest of Robert Babcock. And that is all, so you may applaud.
That was fast. Thank you, DJ, Bob, and Danny. And a special thanks to this week's meeting sponsor, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, Melissa Clark. It's my pleasure to welcome a special guest visiting from our sister city, Dr. Jörg Nigg, the mayor of Celle, Germany. Accompanying the mayor are Alyssa Douglas, Tulsa Global Alliance Board Chair, Margaret Banahy, Tulsa Celle Sister City Partnership Chair, and Bob Leeser, Vice President of Programming at Tulsa Global Alliance. In 1993, Dr. Nigg began his distinguished award-winning career with the German Armed Forces, from which he retired in 2011. He subsequently worked in real estate management. On February 25, 2017, Dr. Nigg began his 10-year tenure as mayor of the city of Celle, Germany. So I'd like to welcome the mayor, and I'd like to present him with a couple of different items. One is our Rotary Club of Tulsa banner, and the other is our centennial book. We celebrated our centennial about 3 years ago.
Thanks a lot.
That's
great. Thank you. So, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, getting presents right before my speech, it's really great, thanks. Normally I have to speak and then I get presents. So I just, I'm really happy for this warm hospitality. Thank you very much, and I'm glad that I can address a few words to you. I just got 3 minutes, so it's good. You have to excuse my English, so the good thing is I don't or won't speak too long. So, although I'm Rotarian, today I'm here as the mayor of Celle, of your sister city. And Celle is a small city of 160,000 inhabitants in Lower Saxony, close to Hamburg, close to Berlin. So it's really a good city for economical reasons. And Celle is very famous for its half-timbered houses. We have the worldwide biggest half-timbered houses collection, which are really in use, where people live in, where we have the old city center in. And we have the oldest still play theater in a castle. So that's 2 big points of Celle for tourism. So you're all invited to come to Celle and see this. And for sure, nobody knows, or less people know, we are the city outside the United States who has most companies on oil and gas. That's why we are twin cities, so now you know why. And that was a big disease for us in the last years because we lost a lot of tax because of the crisis in oil and gas, and we are very focused on oil and gas. And now we try to diversify. So what we do, because it's hard to get companies, to shift companies between the cities with 100, 200 or more workers, what we do is we try to give the whole packages for the companies with their workers. So we do the housing for them, we do education for them, whatever they need, and try to get companies to Celle like this. So everybody of you who want to come to Celle, who want to come to Germany, just address me, address us. We have the red carpet for you. That's all. I think the 3 minutes are over. Since I'm here as a mayor and not from a Rotary Club, I don't bring you a flag, but I bring you something from the city for sure. So we have a glass coin. They are just, it's almost unique. We have just 20 of them for 1 year. It's with my weapon, with a weapon of, no, it's not a weapon, sorry, it's the sign, it's a sign, the flag of Celle weapon. Yeah. It's good. In Germany, it's called Wappen. So that's a sign of the city. So that's why Wappen. I'm sorry. It's just a sign of the city and my signature. And yeah, it's, like I said, almost unique. So thanks for having me here. It's really great. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, and once again, welcome to the city of Tulsa. A couple of announcements. The IBA task force will meet immediately after this meeting in room 233. Thirsty Thursday is the third Thursday of each month. That would be tomorrow. It's a social networking event, and social networking at its finest. It's a great time to bring guests and to catch up with your fellow Rotarians. This Thirsty Thursday will be held at Old Vine on Peoria, and it begins at 5:30 p.m. Medical Supply Workday will be this Saturday from 8 a.m. to noon. Family and friends are welcome, and for more information, you can see Tim Caldwell. Tim, are you here somewhere? Tim. So see Tim if you need more information or you want to just let him know that you're going to be there. RSVP cards are on your tables for next week's program, which features concert pianist and composer Christiana Pecoraro. And also sign-ups are available for our district forum, which will be on October 31st. So please let us know if you're going to be bringing a guest so that we can plan accordingly for our meals and other logistics. Also, there are cards on your tables to submit questions if you'd like to pose those questions at the forum on October 31st. We had a great visit last week at our partner school, Celia Clinton. So thank you, Rotarians, for making a difference and helping with all the good things that are happening out at Celia Clinton. Be the Inspiration is something we do every week. This week's Rotary Inspiration is the Tulsa Boys Home. This is actually a book that commemorates the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Boys Home. It was presented to us at a celebration just about a week ago. Past President Mike Homan attended that celebration and received this gift to us. So a little bit about the Boys Home. The Boys Home was founded in 1918, and it began in a two-story house in downtown Tulsa. Leaders of First Presbyterian Church and the Rotary Club of Tulsa proved to be the keys to the establishment of the Tulsa Boys Home. This is really the stuff of legend. So in 1918, a Rotarian was passing through a downtown alley, and he noticed a young boy who was sleeping in a cardboard box. It was probably a piano crate. The sight moved him, and it spurred his fellow Rotarians and members of First Presbyterian Church to address the plight of Tulsa's orphans. They raised $10,000. They purchased a house on South Boulder, converted the residence into a shelter for homeless boys. Thus began the storied history of the Tulsa Boys Home. And again, just this past Sunday, the Tulsa Boys Home celebrated 100 years of providing hope and healing to over 13,000 boys who've either been displaced, abused, or faced substance abuse issues. Congratulations to the Tulsa Boys Home for a century of making a difference in the lives of Tulsa boys and in the lives of all the people in our community. Tulsa Boys Home, you are our Rotary inspiration. Let's have a round of applause for Tulsa Boys Home. This time it's my pleasure to introduce Kathy Gorell with a memorial resolution. Kathy.
Fellow Rotarians, I would first like to introduce the family of Ed Jenkins. Chris Jenkins, if you all will stand when I introduce you. Alex Jenkins, Margaret Jenkins, Rebecca Jenkins, and Patty Lawson. We're so glad you all could make it today. Edward William Jenkins, MD, was born on March the 7th, 1926, and died peacefully at his home at Inverness Village on September 17, 2016. Ed was predeceased by his wife of 62 years, Mary Jane Jenkins, the love of his life, whom he met when they were just 14 years old. He is survived by 5 children. Some of you have met: Christopher Durfee Jenkins, MD, Rebecca Ann Jenkins, Nancy Jenkins, and Margaret Elizabeth Jenkins, and Patty Gale Lawson, along with 5 grandchildren. Ed was a longtime member of Kirk of the Hills Presbyterian Church. He was active as an elder, a Sunday school teacher, and chairman of Missions Committee. His faith in Christ was the foundation of his life. Ed was a faithful family man, a devoted spouse, and a loyal friend with a great sense of humor. We all know that. He loved gardening, photography, and was an enthusiastic lover of nature. He graduated from the University of Vermont with a BS and stayed at the University of Vermont Medical School, earning an MD. He did general surgery residency at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire, and 1 year of training in cancer surgery at Massachusetts State Cancer Hospital, Tufts Medical School in Westfield, Virginia. This was followed by a residency in cardiovascular and thoracic surgery at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. So moving to Tulsa, he joined Dr. Joe Burge in practice in cardiovascular and thoracic surgery. And as pilots, since they both were, on occasion they flew themselves to smaller areas in Arkansas and Missouri that lacked that specialty. During his career, Ed was president of the American Cancer Society, Tulsa chapter, president of the Oklahoma Thoracic Society, president of the Oklahoma Heart Association, Tulsa chapter, president of the Oklahoma Surgical Association, and president of the American College of Surgeons, Oklahoma chapter, along with many more accolades. They go on and on. Ed was an avid traveler, and he visited 98 countries with his wife, family, and friends, including mission trips with his church to Nepal, Kazakhstan, Honduras, Tanzania, Russia, and Paraguay. Dr. Jenkins loved people and had a heart for service. After retiring from his surgical practice, he offered his time for many free clinics throughout Oklahoma, international church missions, trips in Central and Latin America, Russia, Africa, and Central America. Ed was also on the founding board for Inverness Village. Ed was an active member for close to 40 years of the Rotary Club of Tulsa until his death. He was a Paul Harris Fellow, a Club Foundation Fellow, and an MSI ambassador. Dr. Jenkins embraced life with contagious enthusiasm for all that he did. I move that this resolution be adopted by a standing vote of the Rotary Club of Tulsa. May we rise for a moment of silent tribute to the memory of Dr. Edward William Jenkins.
Thank you, Kathy. The Rotary Club of Tulsa will continue to embrace the Jenkins family. Now for a special presentation, please welcome fellow Rotarian and Chair of Club Foundation Development, Luann Buehlinger.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is a very special day because we're going to recognize all of the Rotarians who have achieved new levels of giving to our Rotary Club of Tulsa Foundation. So on behalf of the trustees of the Rotary Club of Tulsa Foundation and our committee, including past President Del Dreyer, past President Tom Klenda, and past Chairman of the Foundation Trustees, Duff Weddle, it's our honor to present 26 Rotarians with recognition for achieving their new levels this year. As you may know, our own club foundation awards grants to Tulsa area nonprofits, and it funds major Rotary projects, including our Partner in Education, Celia Clinton projects. It also includes Camp Enterprise and water well drilling projects in Nicaragua. Our foundation is funded through your gifts to the Sarge, but also through IBA ticket gifts and direct donations to the foundation through legacy gifts from wills and trusts. So first, I'd like to introduce Club Foundation donors who have reached new levels. And so if all of you will start to line up over here, please. As I read the names, each person will come onto the stage and receive a new foundation pin indicating their giving level, and we can hold our applause until the end. And then after you come across the stage, we ask that you stand in front of the stage for a group picture. Our newest fellows of the Rotary Club of Tulsa Foundation with gifts of $500 to $2,499 includes Robert Walters, and those who couldn't be here today, including Chris McCown and Thomas Lukock. Stepping up to the Bronze Fellow level for gifts to the foundation of $2,500 to $7,499 include Stephen Robart, Joe Moore, Jason George, Thomas Hardcastle, John Crouch, Robert Babcock, Joy Snyder, and those who could not join us today, including Andrew Coffey, Hunter Maddox, and Calvin Vogt. Those advancing to the Silver Fellow giving level with gifts of $7,500 to $14,999 include Tim Caldwell, Becky Fields, Darren Walkup, Karen Keith, Bill Miller, Jerry Barrientos, and Kirk Hayes, who couldn't be here today. Our newest Gold Fellows with gifts of $15,000 to $24,999 include Douglas Stewart, and those who couldn't join us today, including Dana Burks and Mike Neal. And our newest Platinum Fellows with gifts of $25,000 to $49,999 include Jim Burwell. Thank you, Jim. And he gets a special plaque. And if we can have a photographer over there for the, okay. Do you want him to double up, DJ? Okay. And while she's doing that, we also want to honor Jake Dollarhide, who is also at the platinum level, who could not be here today. We're grateful to all of you for your faithful support of the foundation. Thank you so much, and be seated. And thank you to Tina, Tommy Lynn, and Ryan for keeping track of all of these donations and helping to plan this meeting today. And so at this time, I'd like to introduce you to past President Del Dreyer, who will make a special presentation.
Thank you, Luann. The Allen Edwards Society was started in 2010 to recognize those Rotarians who made legacy gifts to the Rotary Club of Tulsa Foundation by naming the foundation as a beneficiary in their estate plans for a gift of $25,000 or more. By doing so, funds would come into the foundation at the time of their passing. Allen Edwards, who was club president the year the foundation was started, agreed to have his name associated with the award and made the first legacy gift. 8 other Rotarians joined him that year in naming the club, the foundation, in their wills or trusts. Our friend Dr. Ed Jenkins left us in September of 2016 before we had an opportunity to present him with his Allen Edwards Society Award. Today, in recognition of his legacy gift of $27,000, which the foundation received from his estate, we are presenting the award to his son, Chris. Chris, would you please come to the stage to accept his award? If you would like to join the 18 Rotarians who to date have made legacy pledges and are Allen Edwards Society members, please see myself, Luann, or any one of the other Foundation Development Committee members, and we will assist you with the needed steps to complete that gift for the benefit of our foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luann. Thank you, Dell. Thank you all for helping make Tulsa such a special community. At this time, it's my privilege to introduce our Sarge, Mr. Daniel Gomez. Daniel.
Good afternoon. It feels like it's been a while. We had a couple of weeks off with some special events, but I'm glad to be back. Have a couple of things that have happened since the last time we were here. We got a new flag, if anybody didn't see that. I like it. I know
like
it was good. The cool thing is you can actually fly this at your house, whereas the old flag you couldn't. So I just think it was a pretty cool deal that after 2 years, it's official now. It's our official city flag. The other news item that happened was, since the last time I spoke, is when the alcohol law finally changed on October 1st. And I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but if you went to the gas station at the end of the month, it was completely dry, like there was nothing to get. I was really happy to see some entrepreneur come out with a T-shirt, the Oklahoma Beer Drought Survivor of 2018. I don't know who made it, but I hope he made a lot of money because I think it's hilarious. Anybody who considers themselves a survivor, look it up online. Couple of finds this week. Brian Bovard has donated $100, and he wants to, he's doing it in honor of the Tulsa Boys Home. He actually told me about this a few months ago, and we thought today was the right time to do it. I pulled the Tulsa World article where it says right there, founded by First Presbyterian Church and the Downtown Rotary Club. Brian, if you're here, thank you. And how about a round of applause for Brian? Thank you. It's a big day for Jerry Barrientos. In addition to being recognized earlier today, last week her business was recognized at the Small Business Summit Award, Diversity Business Champion for her company, First Mate Financial Advisors. Jerry sent me a couple of pictures. This is her and the other winners with their awards. Here's her and her team. And there's a picture of the award. So thank you, Jerry, and congratulations. Jenny Hammock is donating $75. Happy birthday to not only her, but also her 1-year-old son, Levi, who happened to share the exact same birthday. So she told me today that she doesn't really get to celebrate her birthday anymore. So if you see her, she's back there. Be sure to tell her happy birthday as well, and congratulations to Levi too. Thanks, Jenny. Tim Caldwell gave me $100 to welcome his newest granddaughter, Jensen Piper Kingsley, born October 5th, 6 pounds, 15 ounces. This is the picture. He actually sent me a bunch of pictures, but this is the one he told me to share. So thanks, Tim, and congratulations. Football tickets. There's only a couple of home games left for each team. So Tim told me this morning for Kansas State, he actually came into some better tickets. So if you bid out there for Kansas State and you win today, you actually get an upgrade. These are section 7, which if you look on the back, look to be the lower level, about the 20-yard line on the press box side. So I think that's a heck of a deal. If anybody wants these tickets, there's no bids right now, and you get the upgrade. So thank you, Tim, and let's hopefully somebody will buy those tickets. I know OU has one loss, but I mean, come on, they're still doing great. Also, the Bedlam game is coming up. It's got a while, and it's in Norman this year, and I think you guys can predict how that's going to end. So. I was pretty ambiguous, right? I could be praising either side.
You're an OSU guy, right?
I am an OSU guy.
Yeah.
So we have homecoming against Texas coming up. There are a couple of bids out there, so if anybody wants to bid up a little bit, it should still be a good game. You know, we always seem to play well against Texas, at least in the last 10 years. So go ahead and bid on those. Sarge Fines, you know where to contact me. I believe Tina has set up something special for me to end this on. If anybody wants to do the chicken dance. Nobody? Nobody's gonna join me? Come on. So as we all know, it's Oktoberfest weekend. This weekend, you know, one of the biggest, one of the best in the United States, and I think even the honorable mayor would be impressed. So that's all the time I got. Thanks to the 3 people who didn't make me do that alone. All right. Well, thanks, President Hannibal, and thanks everybody.
Thanks, Daniel. This time, side mic announcement from Chase Beasley about the Port of Catoosa. Chase.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chase Beasley. I'm with the Rotaract Club. We are very excited to announce an upcoming collaboration with Downtown Rotary and Rotaract that is going to be a wonderful event where we are going to be able to tour the Port of Catoosa. So if you haven't been through Leadership Tulsa, or if you haven't been able to take a chance and go out to do that, this will be your opportunity to do so. There will be no cost associated with the tour. It will include a special barge trip at the end. So if you haven't been able to take a barge through the Port of Catoosa, this again would be a great opportunity to do so. A couple details on the event. So it is going to be Friday, November the 9th. From 1 to 5 p.m. We're going to set up a carpool. We'll plan on meeting at the McNelly's downtown. We will all carpool together from there and leave at about 12:30 so that we can arrive at the port by 1 o'clock and then come back at the end of it and have a bit of a celebration afterward for any of those who would care to participate. I hear that McNelly's has an excellent beer selection that, again, I think our German friends would be impressed with as well. So, again, that is Friday, November the 9th. We will be carpooling from McNelly's, leaving at 12:30. So if you'd like any information on that, please see me after the event. And last shameless plug, Wine, Cheese, and Chocolate is October the 25th, next Thursday at Living Arts Tulsa. So you also, if you do not have tickets for that, would love to help you out as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chase. And now it's time for our vocational minute. This week's minute is provided by Elaine Dishman, Regent Bank.
Good afternoon. I'm Elaine Dishman. I've been in this wonderful Rotary Club for 25 years. I want to be your banker. I've been in banking for over 35 years. I currently work at Regent Bank, which is a community bank located at 71st and Yale. A little history on the bank. It was started 10 years ago by Sean Copeland, our CEO. And we have today locations in Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Springfield, Missouri, and Newada. Our asset size is over $550 million in 10 years. I'm a calling officer. I call on businesses and individuals such as yourself to help with their financial needs. We're a very caring bank and try to go above and beyond with customer service. This year, I was asked to head up our nonprofit banking sector, and we have provided really educational training, world-class training for nonprofit leaders. It's free. We have our last session, November 14th. We're trying to help educate nonprofit executives. We have a free nonprofit checking account that we're offering to all of our nonprofits. It is truly our way of giving back to the community, and some of our Rotarians and nonprofit leaders here have attended that training. Thank you so much for letting me tell you a little bit about myself and this wonderful club. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Our Rotarian of the day is Lane Dolly. As a child, Oklahoma-born Lane Dolly learned about grassroots politics from her father, who was a physician and a rancher. That led her to Washington, D.C. in 1981, where she worked with the federal government, nonprofits, private firms, three Republican national conventions, and President Reagan's White House. After a later stint in state government, Lane combined her experience with a growing interest in history to earn a master's degree in public policy. In her spare time, she also pursued an interest in genealogy that led her to Harvard University. At Harvard's Houghton Library, she discovered a public-minded ancestor who had served alongside historically prominent leaders in Indian Territory before the Civil War. She is now the author of an historical fiction book series, having published 2 volumes with a 3rd in the works. She returned to Oklahoma in 2015 and is now immersed in ranching and novel writing, and also serving here with us at the Rotary Club of Tulsa. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Lane Dolly.
I hope that didn't suggest that I attended Harvard, because I didn't. I just researched there. From her childhood schooling in a 2-room school along the Kaw River Valley through her undergraduate degree at the University of Kansas, Sara Paretsky charted an amazing course for her life, with social and racial injustice at the forefront of her focus. She adopted Chicago as her new home after doing community organizing work there in 1966, in the same neighborhood where Martin Luther King was organizing. There, in the shadow of the old steel mills, she looked to the future and developed a hopeless passion for the Cubs. Along the way, she earned an MBA and her PhD in American history. Gaining more steam, Sara began to write. Her product revolutionized the mystery novel by creating a female investigator who uses her wits as well as her fists. What followed was a whole series, translated into almost 30 languages. Sara has not only earned numerous awards over the years, but she's endowed scholarships, mentored students, served on advisory boards, and promoted women writers in the mystery field. Here to enliven us about her famous character and her creative process, please join me in welcoming Sara Paretsky.
Thank you, Lane, for that very generous introduction. Thank you, Hannibal. Thank you, Barney. Barney told me there's a clock that I should keep an eye on, but I'm not seeing it. Oh, above me. Okay, got it. So it is not fun for a Jayhawk to come to Oklahoma in the fall. I had the great privilege of getting an honorary degree from the University of Kansas. I think it was 4 years ago, and I gave the commencement speech, and I said this, that as a Jayhawk, it was not fun to go through the fall, and that my spirits always rose in March. And I actually got tweets from the football team saying, "Never come back to Kansas." And I was like, and then the following year, they didn't win a single game, which made me feel very remorseful. I thought maybe I had depressed them so much that they couldn't even win one game. So I guess one of the hallmarks of my personality, since I've lived in Chicago for almost 50 years now, is is intense loyalty to institutions, to the people that I care about, to the institutions that are important to me, even when they can't win a football game. I think I will never really overcome my Kansas roots. And this morning, when it took 90 minutes to drive the 25 miles from my house to O'Hare Airport, I was definitely ready to move back to eastern Kansas, where a traffic jam, as those of you who ranch know, is 5 cars lined up at the stoplight. I grew up in a family that loved reading, loved writing. I was very fortunate to have parents who read everything from science to poetry to my mother loved mysteries, my father loved westerns. They read aloud to each other. We all read to each other. My older brother, I have 4 brothers. I'm number 2 in the lineup. My older brother, when he was 14 and I was 11, read Dracula, and he loved it so much that he insisted that I read the book, and I was, you know, a little duckling that followed after him. So I did, and the book absolutely terrified me. I couldn't sleep. And my brother, Jeremy, was so remorseful that he filched a sterling silver knife from my mother's collection because in the Stoker novel, silver keeps the vampire at bay. I slept with that until my mother found the knife, and she was furious that I'd taken it out of the dining room, took it away, and then I stopped sleeping again. And in the book, the vampire can take the form of a wolf. And I knew that all around me, I had cornfields on one side and 3 sides and cows on one side. I knew that vampire wolves were lurking in the corn and that they would come through the window at any time. So I would stand at the window watching for them all night long. And one morning, there they were, about 3 in the morning. Our back garden was filled with vampire wolves. So I screamed and woke everyone in the house, who all came running. And it turned out that the neighbors' cows had knocked over the fence and were helping themselves to my mother's sweet corn. And my father went down and got rid of them, which I thought was very impressive. But actually, I was thinking, I wrote a book that was not in my series called Bleeding Kansas that was set in that part of the country, and one of the families in it had a dairy farm. And I was thinking after I published the book that maybe someone who can't tell the difference between a wolf and a cow really oughtn't to be writing about dairy farming. So I guess my history, as my psychological history coming to writing and coming to crime writing, is that I have a very low terror threshold, and that I don't like, I can't read Stephen King, for instance, brilliant writer though he is. I can't handle that level of terror. I can't handle serial killers. I can't handle there's a British writer named Mo Hader who has a serial killer who takes people's skin off and cures it and writes messages on it. No, thank you. I like ordinary Chicago-style crime. One of my stepsons is a machinist, and he was once looking for a place to rent and set up his shop, and he found a very cheap place along the Chicago River, and he thought he was joking. He asked the realtor how many float fish had been there that winter, and the man said 3. So he thought, maybe that was not the location he wanted for his shop. He decamped and moved to Arizona. But when I started writing, I really wanted to do 2 things. I had always been writing very privately, short stories, poetry. I wanted to create a woman character who would seem believable to me. In a lot of crime fiction of the 40s, 50s, 60s, the woman is either a victim or who she is defined by her sexuality. If she has a sex life, she's inevitably going to be wicked or a murder victim. And if she doesn't have a sex life, well, she can't even tie her shoes in public without adult supervision. So I was trying to create a character who would be more like the women that I knew, my friends and me, you know, struggling, doing jobs that didn't necessarily exist for us when we were growing up and in school, meeting the opposition that women did find back in the 70s and 80s when they were charting new frontiers, but getting to have a sex life without that defining who she was. So I started with that idea, and one of the things that startled me coming to Chicago from Kansas was how fiercely people identify with their ethnic or racial identities. In Kansas, I will say that we for sure had our share of racism, but we weren't hyphenated. And when my first job after I moved there permanently, after I stopped being a volunteer, I was a secretary at the University of Chicago in the political science department. And Polish American kids would come in, they would expect me to waive late fees for them or get them into closed classes. And when I would say no, they would say, "You're a traitor to the Polish nation." And I was like, you know, I'm just the secretary. I'm not really grand enough to betray Poland. But when I started creating my detective and wanting to write about her, I knew that she had to have that kind of identity to really be a credible Chicago character. And I knew I couldn't write at all well in an African American or Latino or even Irish American voice. And since Paretsky is one of my grandfathers did come from Poland, I made her partly Polish ancestry. And then all my heritage is the cold countries, England, Holland, Lithuania, Poland. So I thought, let her have an Italian mother, give her some warmth that was missing from my life. So that's her Chicago, her defined heritage. But because I'm the writer and I don't really define along those lines, I don't really have her embracing it the way a true Chicagoan would. The other thing that I knew as a writer, the summer that I spent working with a youth program on the city's south side, we took the kids all over the city on the elevated trains. And then we'd bring them back to the church where we had our day camp meetings. And we would ask them to tell us what they'd seen. And the first time back, you know, we thought they'd be talking about the buildings. A lot of them had never been downtown, not even at Christmas, to see the beautiful windows that Marshall Fields used to put up. But what they saw were the things that were close up, right by the train. They saw drunks passed out on rooftops. They saw even a fox running along the train embankment. And they really, even before I was planning to be a writer, imagining that I could be a writer or write for publication, they really taught me to look at what was there right under my nose in the city. And I think over time, it made me a better writer, made me a stronger writer, to see with that child eye what was there close up. And one of the things that I did learn from doing that is there is an amazing amount of wild animal life in the city. I mean, I think every city in America now has coyotes in it. They're just kind of commonplace. But we have beavers, we have foxes, pheasants, just animals that you would never expect to see in a city of 3 million people. So that's been a kind of a fun way to see and explore the city too. When I started writing, I wasn't imagining Shell Game, my new book, is the 19th book in the series, and I wasn't imagining a series. I was trying to prove to myself that I could write a book. You know, my parents were wonderful people, but they also were very traditional people. They didn't really like women having lives outside the home unless they weren't married and needed to support themselves. And it took me a long time to find a voice and to get the courage and to think that I really could write for publication and have a public presence. And I owe a lot to my husband, actually, who turned 95 yesterday. I'm very lucky that I still have him with me, who just was endlessly supportive and, you know, you go girl, you do that girl. So a lot of my books are dedicated to him because really I don't think I ever would have climbed that mountain without his backing and his support. I also am really impressed by the work that you all do here. It was interesting listening to you, and the kinds of work that you support is very dear to my heart, especially the educational programs that you support. You know, we will be nowhere as a country if we turn our backs on our children and don't see that they get really well educated, become literate, and become able to really participate fully in the society. So I thank you for taking that on here, and for Rotarians everywhere who do that really important work. I think the clock is telling me that there is some time left, and I'm happy to read a little from the book, but I'd really love to take questions. If so, let me have a, yes, sir.
Please use the mic if you're going to have a question.
Have you ever read any of the Kinsey Millhone series that Sue Grafton did, and are you a fan of those?
Have I ever read any of Sue Grafton's Kinsey Millhone? I never took the chance to ask Sue how I should pronounce her last name. Millhone is what I've always said. Yes, Sue and I published our first books in the same year, 1982. We didn't know each other well. She was in California, I was in Chicago, but she was a warm, generous, very funny woman, and also a very private woman. None of us knew that she was ill until the news of her death came across, which was just shattering. So Sue and I read each other's books until about our fifth books, and then we found we were doing so many of the same things, the old man in the garage in Sue's books, the old man on the ground floor in my books, and we thought, too much bleed in and out of each other's stories, so we kind of backed away from each other, but I had tremendous admiration for her craft and for her personally. Yes?
In your current novel, the one you have for sale, it describes some of the background work you did to build the story, the places you visited. Was there a particular event that inspired this most recent novel, or are there particular events that have inspired other novels that you've written with this character?
Was there a particular event that inspired Shell Game or other events that inspired other novels? Part of Shell Game, part of the story is set in tax havens, and I read an article 3 or 4 years ago about these tax havens, places like St. Kitts or the Isle of Jersey, that are spread around where they actually have essential. I didn't go see any of these, but but they have these huge warehouses where billionaires can buy space or rent space, and they have essentially museums of their most valuable artwork, some of which is stolen, and they keep it there in these tax havens to avoid like alimony in the event of a divorce or more ruthless revenge from business partners who think they've been done out of money. And it fascinated me, and so I started building my story around that. I think for me as a writer, it's really important to keep things set in Chicago, set in the place where I know how law works or doesn't work, and just even what the names of every jurisdiction in this country, let alone overseas, uses slightly different terminology, ranks in the police department, who investigates arson, is it a state's attorney, a district attorney, some other label. So I feel like I write most authentically when I stay close to Chicago, and my challenge for Shell Game was to have tax havens and Chicago come together. I turned 70 last year, and I have a cousin who's just about my age, 3 months apart. So to celebrate our 70th birthday, we rented a house up in the Boundary Waters near the U.S.-Canadian border in northern Minnesota, and invited 5 of our closest friends to come, and we had a wonderful week hiking there. And then I thought, that is a chase scene waiting to happen. So, so that location definitely inspired this book. I want to go back to my second book for the most fun I ever had writing a book and doing the research for it. My husband had served in the Royal Navy during the Second World War. He was actually part of the flotilla that went to Normandy on D-Day. And he maintained his love of ships and shipping, and we used to drive up to Sault Ste. Marie in the summers. He stood there at the locks, and he stood there one day and he said, "What would happen if you blew up a ship in one of these locks?" And so I thought, okay, Courtney, I'll come up with why someone would do that and what would happen if you did it. And so I wrote this book, and then I didn't know anything about shipping life, and I thought I'd better see a ship before I send this book into to try to sell it. So we went back to the Sioux, and I started calling companies that company name would be on the back of the ship, and I started calling them, and I called Canada Steamship, which was the biggest shipper on the Great Lakes. Their headquarters were in Montreal, and this was before cell phones. I was standing there at a payphone, feeding in quarters. And they were so nice. I had tried U.S. Steel and Continental Grain, and they just laughed at me and hung up on me. Canada Steamship, a guy in their dispatch office said, "Well, do you want to sail for a day, a week, a month, or a year?" And I was working then for CNA Insurance in Chicago. I had 6 days of vacation left, so I said a week. And he said, "Call me back tomorrow," which was Saturday. And they said, "Okay, you be at such and such dock in Thunder Bay, Canada, Thunder Bay, Ontario, I guess it was, at 8 Monday morning, and get on the J.W. McGiffin, and she'll take you to Niagara Falls." So Courtney and the dog and I drove like mad all night long, got there just in the nick of time, and it was the most fabulous experience. It was an ore freighter, and I sailed on it. I guess it was 3 days that it took to go from Thunder Bay to the Welland Canal. When you're out in the middle of Lake Superior, this ship is so long that if you're on the stem, the very front end of it, you don't hear those engines. It's the most magical, mystical thing, the colors of the water. And they let me have the run of the ship, so I got to talk to everyone, the 27 crew members, and it was September. They were bored with each other. They don't take any time off until the winter, and then they get all their time off together. So they'd been sailing together for all these months, and they were sick of each other. They were glad to have someone else to tell their stories to. And then, we were getting close to the end of the voyage, and I'm thinking, I have $600 in my checking account and no savings in those days. I thought, what is this little jaunt going to cost me? So finally I said to the captain, no one has said anything as vulgar as money, but what do I owe you for this trip? And he said, "Oh, I can't charge you. We'd have to advertise as a passenger ship, and we're an ore freighter." So I was like, I think there's time for one more question, if I can be really fast in my answer, if there is one question. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have to read your books in series, or can you talk them out and still follow?
Do you have to read the books sequentially, or can you read them in different orders? I've tried to write them so that each one stands on its own, even though the cast of characters is essentially the same. The dogs arrived in book 4, but each book should be complete on its own. I think the books, when I look at the whole series, my third book, Killing Orders, V.I.'s mother was a refugee from the race laws in Mussolini's Italy, and my third book kind of deals with her history, and I gave her my own grandmother's story as a refugee from Eastern Europe. And so that book, in some ways, even though it's one of the oldest books, is kind of my most personal in some ways. And then the 16th book in the series, my husband, after he stopped being in the Royal Navy, became a high-energy physicist, and was a protege of Enrico Fermi's, and through him, I was privileged to meet many of the most amazing people who worked on the quest for the heart of the atom. And my 16th book, Critical Mass, is kind of my homage to him and the work that he did. So going back and looking at the backlist, I guess those are the two that really stand out for me. And then Hardball, which really is set in the work that I did in Chicago in that hot, riot-filled summer of 1966. Those are the three that I feel the closest to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah, for a great presentation. A book recognizing today's program will be presented to our partner in education school, Celia Clinton, and this week's book is Chicken Dance. So you see, Magic City Books is here with Sarah's book, Shell Game, and you can pick up a copy after the meeting. Encourage you to do so. Upcoming programs on October 24th, which is next week. That's next week. Concert pianist and composer Cristiana Pecoraro will be here. Acclaimed as one of the most gifted musicians in her generation, Italian-born pianist Cristiana Pecoraro has consistently entertained and enlightened audiences with her inspired performances and her original programming. The New York Times called her, and I quote, an artist of the highest caliber, following her stunning 1996 debut at Lincoln Center, and a gold medal winner in the 2016 Global Music Awards. She's performed on some of the world's most prestigious stages, including Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, United Nations, the Guggenheim Museum in New York, and the Sydney Opera House. Next Wednesday, she'll perform right here in Thomas Hall. So you'll want to be here, and you'll want to bring a guest as we transform Thomas Hall into Carnegie Hall for an amazing program. I want to thank you for being here, and let's not lose sight of that grand Rotary International vision. Together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. We are adjourned.